We may have a potential leak that is telling us that a new 2D Metroid is in development and coming in 2025, a sequel to Metroid Dread, Metroid 6. And with this information, it may be telling us what exactly Nintendo's plan is for Metroid. And what that plan may be is annual Metroid releases moving forward. And that's what we're talking about today. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and today we're going to be talking about annual Metroid releases. I believe that Nintendo has a plan for Metroid that's to push it to another level of popularity. When you think back to the first decade of the 2000s, there were actually a lot of Metroid games that were coming out with a fair bit of regularity. We had both Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime in 2002, then a couple years later we had Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Then afterwards, for the Nintendo DS, we had Metroid Prime Pinball, and then a year later we had Metroid Prime Hunters. Then by 2007 we had Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and then 2 years later, they compiled the 3 different Metroid games, remastered them, improved them somewhat, and released Metroid Prime Trilogy, and to close out the decade in 2010, we had Metroid Other M. That's 9 different Metroid releases that came out between the years of 2002 and 2010. They were averaging more than 1 Metroid release per year. And this is the time where a lot of us became Metroid fans. That's when I became a Metroid fan. I first played Metroid Prime, and I enjoyed that game so much I became an instant Metroid fan and played every single one since. It's an incredible series, it's one of my favorite series. When we think about what we know so far about the Metroid series, technically, officially speaking, this is all we know. The long-rumored Metroid Dread was a real project that eventually came out, and it is the Metroid Dread we've enjoyed that came out back in 2021, and we know that Retro Studios is working on Metroid Prime 4. But I believe that we are on the cusp of Metroid coming back to prominence, coming back to a regular release schedule, similar to that first decade of the 2000s. Will it be exactly the same? No. But I think it's going to be pretty good and arguably better than what it was then. So while currently the only modern release is Metroid Dread, I do think there are more games on the way. Metroid Prime 4 has been in development for some time. They announced the restart back at the beginning of 2019. We are now in 2023. I think it's reasonable to think that we may be seeing something at some point by 2024, and based off rumors and reports, there is quite a few that believe that the next Nintendo system is coming out in 2024, and I think Nintendo may want to push Metroid Prime 4 along that system. I still think it'll be cross-gen, it'll still be available for Switch, but I'm thinking Metroid Prime 4 is likely a holiday 2024 release. But there also have been rumors, for years at this point, that we would be getting the Metroid Prime games on Switch. Metroid Prime 1 through 3, the trilogy would come, remastered, to expose the series to the new Nintendo Switch fanbase and prepare fans for the eventual Metroid Prime 4. This rumor has been going on for quite some time, and it has not come to fruition. A lot of people are skeptical that it's even real. However, some prominent industry insiders have been saying that it is legitimate that at least a Metroid Prime HD remaster is on the way, and that 2 and 3 may come at some point down the road. There are even some suggesting that we may see Metroid Prime, the remaster, this year. And this is something that I'm personally subscribing to. I think that Nintendo's going to come out with Metroid Prime HD this year, followed up with Metroid Prime in 2024, and then 2025 we're now getting these leaks suggesting that we're going to be seeing the sequel to Metroid Dread, and that makes a lot of sense. So think about this for a moment. Metroid Dread was made by Mercury Steam, came out in 2021, and they did an incredible job. A highly reviewed game, won Best Action Game of the Year according to the Game Awards. Nintendo shares this on the eShop. It's the best-selling Metroid game of all time. It's a successful release. So, yes, they are likely to follow this up. Think about it like this. Metroid Dread is selling around the same level as Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Three Houses. I have to double check, but it may even be outpacing the sales for those games. And those games have gotten sequels. So Metroid Dread should also likely get a sequel. And just to make sure we understand, Metroid Dread is a 2D Metroid series. There are 2 different types of Metroid series. You have the Prime series, which is the first-person adventure games, and then you have the 2D Metroid series, which is the initial mainline series that is in the Metroidvania style, like Metroid Dread. This leaker that's telling us about the sequel to Metroid Dread apparently leaked back in 2021 Metroid Dread before it was announced. They told us that some company by MS would be making it, that it would be 2D and it would be releasing in 2021, and that it was going to be Metroid Dread, and that turned out to all be true. Now here they're saying this is a translation. I love recovering old tweets. The truth is that at the time in 2020, I had a lot of data, but the confirmation came a couple of months before the game was revealed. What I like the most about this now when I tell you, 2D, MS, 2025, and I give you a wink. So similar to back then, he's hinting that there is a new Metroid in development at Mercury Steam. It's a sequel to Metroid Dread, or at least of that style, the 2D style, and it's coming out in 2025. Now, what's interesting about this is not only just that, okay, awesome, we are getting a follow-up to Metroid Dread, which was fairly easy to predict because of how successful Metroid Dread was, but also if it's being positioned for 2025, then that suggests that the other Metroid things are either coming out afterwards or beforehand. And I'm of the frame of mind that Metroid Prime 4 is coming before then, because I doubt we have to wait all the way until 2026 for this game to come out. Keep in mind, they announced the restart back in 2019, so we'd be talking about 7 years at that point. I don't think that's realistic to expect for a Metroid game, especially because technically they announced they were starting development back in 2017, and while they may have restarted things, they announced at the beginning of 2019, January. They may have started a little bit beforehand. It's unlikely we're going to have to wait all the way until 2026 for Metroid Prime 4. So what we're looking at here is this. Metroid Dread came out at the end of 2021. Then they had a free DLC update that came out to give us more Metroid Dread content to enjoy for the first half of 2022. Now we are in the beginning of 2023, and there are rumors that a Metroid Prime HD may be announced soon. There were rumors that it was going to be announced and coming out last year for the holiday, but that didn't happen. I think that likely Metroid Prime 4 wasn't that close to being ready, so they pushed it up a little bit. There's been this long-standing belief by many that Nintendo's been holding on to a lot of different games. But anyways, they're still going to follow up with Metroid Prime HD soon, I believe. I think it's getting announced this year. And then next year, we're getting Metroid Prime 4 second half of the year to launch, and not on the same day, in the launch window of Nintendo's next big system. It'll showcase that, still be a cross-gen for Switch, and then in 2025, we see the sequel to Metroid Dread. So Metroid 6. So we're looking at a scenario here where we're getting a Metroid game pretty much every single year. And I don't think they're going to be done in 2025. Remember how I was talking about Metroid Prime 2 and 3? At some point or another, they're going to want to remaster those as well, and they'll want to bring them to Switch. Maybe they come out before then, but they could also come out afterwards. I believe Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are going to become the new Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. These two amazing games that Nintendo could drop at any point, but they're simply waiting on them for whatever reason that we don't entirely understand. In my opinion, it all comes down to timing and how they want to pace these franchises. But since I brought up Zelda, let's talk about this. Because Nintendo has tried to maintain basically a Zelda release, a major Zelda release, every single year. The only exception in recent history was 2022 with Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom was going to release in 2022, but Nintendo delayed it a few months later until May of 2023. Now, something to keep in mind here is that COVID occurred, the mass pandemic, that led to a whole bunch of delays. So in my opinion, the reason Nintendo wasn't able to keep that consistent annual Zelda release is probably because of the pandemic. And also, maybe Metroid Prime HD would have been out last year, and Prime 4, we would have been talking about it coming out this year, and so on. I think the pandemic threw things off a little bit, but I think we could be looking at a scenario where Nintendo, like with Zelda, wants to push Metroid almost every single year. Just like back in the 2000s, except this time around, they're going to see much greater success. Metroid Dread, a 2D Metroid game, which is amazing from a gameplay perspective, but definitely doesn't appeal to the mainstream, is still the best-selling Metroid ever. Metroid Prime 4 has an even greater potential to go beyond that. And if they're going to continue to release Metroid every year, they're going to build up this brand, this IP, and build up even more consistent sales, unlike what happened back with the first decade of 2000s with Metroid, where they eventually had to ease off of Metroid releases. I think this could mean that we're going to continue to see consistent Metroid releases almost every single year, moving forward, just like Zelda. Which, by the way, would mean not just mainline games, but the occasional spin-off too. What if we saw another Metroid Prime Hunters, another Federation Force, but done right on Switch or its successor? There's a lot of potential for Metroid games. And that's exciting. Is it true? Well, only time will truly tell, but I do think both history and the signs we're seeing are suggesting so. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.